Hello and welcome back to the From My Perspective podcast, where I, Jackson McCarty, tell you all the names you need to know in the college football landscape that could change the football landscape in the very near future. So we have reduced now. We're going to start doing one episode a week format, and this week I've got a bunch of different things I want to talk to you guys about. While I know bowl games just got announced, we're going to wait till those games get a little bit closer to time before we really delve into them. But for today, we've got the Heisman finalists, we've got transfer portal news, and what that wildness is going on right now. And we've got a few more coaches that have officially signed the dotted line. So before we get into any of that, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I'm just trying to grow the channel. Okay, so we're going to start with the Heisman finalists. We've got Caleb Williams, Stetson Bennett, Max Duggan, CJ Stroud. Those are the final four names that will appear on the ballot as to who will be the Heisman winner this year. While this year has been very well documented that nobody really stood out above the crowd. Stroud came into the season as the betting favorite, but you had Hendon Hooker make his case for a little bit, and you had certain different players kind of rising up and falling down, and it was pretty tumultuous throughout the entire season. Those final four names, I don't believe, will be particularly a good spot of confidence for those who will end up voting for the Heisman, because I think this year is going to be really good for debate, but I also think it's going to imply a lot of changes. Now, when you look at the top four, you've got a lot of different really cool aspects from the season represented within that group. For example, CJ, like I mentioned, was kind of the favorite throughout the season. Max Duggan is the representative of chaos and what college football can be, because TCU was not supposed to be in a position right here. He wasn't even the starter to begin the season, so he really does represent how quick things can change in this sport. Caleb Williams, he's kind of filling into that next man up role in a sense. If he doesn't win it this year, you better watch out, because he's coming for it next year. And then finally, Stetson Bennett, he's the leader of the last undefeated team. So you've got a little piece of interesting storyline for each and every single one of these guys, which I do believe is going to make this specific Heisman very entertaining, but I don't think that necessarily makes it the quality Heisman winner, if that makes sense. So I don't really agree with the last four, and we're just about to talk about that. I do think that is probably the most interesting collection of people you could have assembled from this season. Now, let's talk about who I would have rather seen in there, who I believe deserved to be there, maybe even somebody I think should have been the outright Heisman winner that didn't make this Final Four. So football's moving towards passing. That's hard to ignore, and it's going to be really hard for a running back to win the Heisman in future years, especially when you look at what this season represents. This felt like the closest a running back truly could have gotten in at least a few years to where there's not really a standout passing quarterback or anybody that had all these Heisman moments and collected all these accolades. When you look at the list, Stetson's the only quarterback on that list that had truly the best season possible that his team could have accomplished. We saw everybody else slip up in a big way, but Stetson Bennett is far from the most deserving player on this list, and that is not a detriment to Stetson Bennett. But look at the field that we left out. We left Hendon Hooker out, who I have been, saying all season I believed he was going to be the Heisman, and really got on that bandwagon pretty early. But Bijan Robinson had quite a resume, even if you don't want to talk about it. He had a legitimate year and was the focal point of that Texas offense. And then Blake Corum, who I believe probably had the best resume for a running back, but Donovan Edwards at the end of the season and having the performances he did, he kind of killed that for his teammate, if we're being perfectly honest. You can't go through this list without noticing a bunch of different guys that had legitimate claims. I personally, if I was handed a ballot tomorrow and there was a little write-in section, I'd probably write in Hendon Hooker, because he was still piloting the most explosive offense in college football. But maybe that's just me. This year, though, I do truly believe will be a catalyst for real discourse and for potentially some criteria realignment. Because with quarterback being such a heavy focus, even in a year of bad quarterbacks, we only got quarterbacks on the list. So what do you do moving forward if another year comes up like this and you're going to see the backlash that realistically you will see no matter who wins it? You've got your detractors for Stroud, you've got your detractors for Duggan and for Caleb and for Stetson. Like, whoever comes out on top of this award is not going to be the people's favorite strictly because there is no people's favorite this year. It's hard to put somebody in that position and say, yeah, this is our Heisman, whenever there's really not a true Heisman, and a lot of people feel like it's just a shoehorn quarterback award at this point. So, a solidified Heisman candidate, it makes it a lot easier to single out a specific team to watch. Think about Joe Burrow, which brings in more money for college football. So this year is an objectively bad outcome for college football and for casual viewers, strictly because of the easier revenue that comes with a true solidified number one guy. So I think that's going to open things up and try to find a true number one guy in other positions. Maybe a defensive back. Like, think of the year we saw from Sauce Gardner last year. If a cornerback comes out there and does that at a larger program, strictly because Cincinnati's probably never going to get a Heisman in the modern era, like, think if Kool-Aid McKinstry next year puts up the exact same numbers as Sauce Gardner. I think you lean in to that now because people are tired of seeing, well, yeah, he's kind of got a case. We'll go ahead and throw him in there even though nobody's going to win it. I think you're going to get a lot more diversification across positions strictly off the back of this season. And I think, again, like I had mentioned with running backs, we could see a pretty harsh shift towards running back favorability off the back of this because, like, think if Quinshon Judkins comes out and puts up another crazy season, or Bijan's going to the league. I don't know who else off the top of my head to use as an example of that, but somebody that's a really talented running back that comes out and just has insane numbers, maybe you do lean more towards that and get a bunch of different positions in there so that the field doesn't feel as, well, comparing apples to apples, and none of those apples are particularly good. So it's going to be interesting. I do think that this is going to kind of be a sense as a catalyst for the Heisman voting and for what we see in that specific realm in the future, strictly because of how weird this year is. And I think there's a lot of things that are contributing towards how weird this year was that will continue to push that and continue to move that forward. For example, the transfer portal. I mean, yeah, I'm probably not the first person to say it, but the transfer portal is pretty wild this year and is coming straight off the back of a pretty wild year last year. I mean, look at the amount of difference makers that are going into the portal this year and think about why that is and think about what kind of effect that could possibly have on college football. I mean, let's just isolate quarterbacks right now, because if I start listing off every single talented player in every single position, this is going to be like a 3-hour episode strictly off of reading names from that list. So with quarterbacks, the most impact QBs I could single out here: DJ Uiagalelei, Devin Leary, Cade McNamara, Mikey Keene, Haynes King, Keaton Slovis, JT Daniels, Hudson Card, Drew Pine. Those guys have all started at least a couple games this year, other than Cade, I believe, but he started all last year and won the Big Ten championship for Michigan. So all these guys have had their PT at either Power Fives or, in the case of Mikey Keene, and Drew Pine, I guess, because Notre Dame isn't a Power 5, had significant moments where they looked like legit starters at quality programs. So there's just so many quality options for new coaches, for coaches who are getting a bit stagnant, or, the schools that are losing their quarterbacks to the draft or free agent. Like, a lot of people are worried about, let's just isolate Tennessee here for a second, because Hendon probably going to the draft. Alex Golesh just went to USF. He took that head coaching job. So now you're without your quarterback who piloted that offense, and you're without your offensive coordinator who oversaw it. What if you draw in DJ or Devin Leary or Mikey Keene and get like a legit quarterback to replace him? And that's not to throw a bunch of mud on Joe Milton's name. I don't know that I know he's not the same level as Hendon is, but I don't know that he's totally incapable of operating that team. I just think that there's a whole lot of options for schools that are losing their guy. If Bryce Young leaves this year, you could feasibly see them go and pick up one of these names. I don't think they will, because they've got, a plethora of kids they could bring in at any moment in time. But, all these schools that might need that quarterback help have plenty of options. And then when you expand it to all positions, you've got an absurd amount of talent in the skill position groups and plenty to choose from in the front seven and offensive line. It's a very good spot to be in if you are losing talent whether that be because your head coach left or your new one or whatever it may be. You've got plenty of options that doesn't just rely on recruiting. So the number will continue to go up. That's something we should continue to focus on because look at all the walking examples we've got in college football now of players transferring and making it work out for them. Quinn Ewers, Bo Nix, Hendon Hookers, Zach Evans, Drew Sanders, all these guys have made a quality name for themselves after leaving their program for whatever reason, transferring over to a new one, and stepping on as impact players. I know quite a few of those are quarterbacks. Those were the first, 5 or 6 or however many I just listed that came to mind. But there's so many examples where you can just look at it and be like, yeah, I mean, look at what that kid did, and then subsequently look at how it affects them at the league, because Drew Sanders will probably be a pretty high pick. Zach Evans will probably get some good PT, and then those other quarterbacks, we don't know about Quinn Ewers yet because of the whole Arch Manning situation, but Hendon Hookers and Bo Nix will at least be on a roster somewhere. So it's going to have longevity to it in a couple of years, which will continue to drive that number up, especially if DJ does the same thing or Devin Leary does the same thing and really turns things around. Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is another example. We mentioned him earlier. Transferred from Ohio State to LSU, went on to be the number 1 overall pick, and now he's tearing it up in the league. Like, there's a path forward with these guys as to what to do if you're not getting the PT you want or the opportunities you want at your current school. So that number's just going to keep jumping up because people are proving that it works, and proof is all you really need to make decisions like that. If you have a clear blueprint or you have a clear example as to why this could work out for you, a lot of people are going to be much more willing to jump into the portal. And then prepare for parity, boys and girls. I know that's a bit of a tongue twister to say, but we're seeing it a little bit. I mean, look at the college football playoff final standings if you need proof of it. You don't see Kansas State and TCU and Utah and all these other schools kind of in that collective up there. But think about how those rosters are kind of being put together. You're getting your transfers. You're getting your players from other schools and your recruits coming in and this, that, and the other that are building up and creating a much more level playing field across these conferences. So this is just one of many steps that will kind of help balance out the field. Coaches bring their own guys to their new jobs. Backups move to more established places that can help them establish themselves, and starters move to larger conferences to make a bigger brand. It's becoming a free agency cycle, like I've seen a lot of people complaining about, but in some ways that's not a bad deal. Like, I know it sucks when your favorite player leaves to go to wherever, but like if you were a Zach Evans fan and him going to Ole Miss, I'm sure that hurt. Or, Bo Nix, Auburn to Oregon, or whoever you want to isolate there. But it's something that is working out for college football and something that is creating better games, better teams, and better moments. So why wouldn't you expect more of this and expect more parity and more pure talent across the playing field? When the 12-team playoff hits, that's really when we're going to see the peak of all this, because not only are you having guys transfer right now that don't even believe truly that they can make the college football playoffs, even though like schools like TCU and Cincinnati have now proven that you absolutely can do that. But you're going to have an opportunity to be a real in the hunt team when that 12 expands. So it's going to be really interesting, at least for me, to watch, because I think we're in for something that truly, as far as parity goes and as far as balance goes, we have never seen in this sport. In its long and storied history of college football, I don't think we've ever seen as much balance and as much true competition as we will see in the very near future. Okay, so that's my transfer portal stuff that I want to talk about. Now we've got 4 coaching hires, or 3 coaching hires and one other little tidbit about it that I want to talk about before I let you go. So the big one we've got to talk about, since I haven't been on the pod since this hiring was made, Deion Sanders is officially going to Colorado. And I just want to tell CU fans, congratulations. But secondly, buckle up and don't be complacent. Don't be unaware of the situation, because this will end in heartbreak for you if you sit there and don't fully realize what this likely means for your program. So Deion Sanders knows how big of a fish he is. That's not, we've seen him turn down big jobs. We've seen him kind of wait on his hands because he knows he can get something even bigger. And I'm kind of surprised that's not what happened with this gig. But, moving up to a Power 5, and establishing yourself with these transfer kids. Like, who knows who he'll pull in from that list I was talking about earlier. But we know that if he gets the right amount of kids in and the right mindset is established out there, it should only take him a year or two to really make some noise and make some impact in Colorado. So what happens when a bigger school is calling? If Florida State opened up tomorrow and called him, I think Deion Sanders was the head coach at Colorado for 3 days or a week or however long that was. But that's kind of besides the point. It wasn't too long ago that Colorado was used as a stepping stone, and Mel Tucker moved on to Michigan State, took all of his kids with him, and all I'm telling Buffs fans is to not be complacent, because you've seen this fall out whenever a coach feels that he is made for bigger things, they're just going to leave. Colorado's not the old Colorado. It takes a lot to build that program back up to where it used to be. So why would you stick around and try to do that when, for one, Colorado is not Deion's comfortable, not an area of comfortability for him. That's not a place he's ever had to recruit, and not a place that he really knows all that well. So he can go down, below or inside that Bible Belt, get a huge job down there. I would expect that to happen, truly, because that's way more his speed and way more his style. So don't be shocked if that's what happens. He knows how big of a fish he is. I can't say that enough. Colorado is a means to an end, in my opinion. All he has to do, get them to 7 wins within the next year or two, then maybe get them to a 9-win, and then just wait for all these offers to roll in, because there's not going to be a single job opening that doesn't slide a contractor across his desk, because everybody wants Deion. And they are going to whenever he proves that he can do it at the Power 5 level. The Buffs can remain aware of that fact, that Deion is going to be the most sought-after coach year in, year out, if he makes this thing work, and that he has no real loyalty to this program, that he is here to have a little bit of fun, get a lot of kids some real exposure, try to build a program up to make it really look good on his resume, then you're going to have a great time for those 2 or 3 years or however long he's there. But if you forget that and think that he really has some sense of loyalty to this program and really wants to make a career out of being here, then you're in for a lot of heartbreak. You're in for a lot of what you will feel like is betrayal, when everybody has been telling you since the first day he signed on that that is not the case. That we all know what he is doing, even though he hasn't said it, and just to be ready if that is the outcome. So yeah, that's obviously the biggest coach that we needed to talk about, and the one we needed to get out of the way first. But the one that I found myself most interested by, because I didn't really see it coming, Jamie Chadwell going to Liberty. It's a decision I was personally confused by for a little bit, but it's starting to make a little bit more sense the more I think about it. And don't get me wrong, I had to wear the Coastal shirt today because I knew I was going to be talking about this topic, and I knew that Coastal fans are not particularly happy with Jamie Chadwell right now, and the fact that he is leaving the Coastal Carolina program. But this is another instance of you can't get too attached to somebody if you're not a huge school, because if they feel like they have a better shot to get to one of those huge schools by moving somewhere else, they're going to do it. And that's what I think Jamie Chadwell is doing. I mean, look at the last head coach that was at Liberty. He's now the Auburn head coach, and he came with a lot of baggage. So if Jamie Chadwell goes out here and wins at Liberty, who's to say he doesn't make a similar type of move? You won't see me promoting Liberty as some Cincinnati type job where they're really a monstrous program that a lot of head coaches can go to and jump from and make work, but there's at least, like I was talking about earlier with the transfer portal, there's a blueprint for Jamie Chadwell to get to a large job that I don't know was really there with the Coastal Carolina job. I mean, he was in talks with the SEC for a little bit, but nothing ever really came to fruition. Now, I think he sees the writing on the wall with all of his talent either leaving or getting really old. The namely one right there would be Grayson McCall, because I do think he should go to the league. I don't know what he will do, but I know that he's lost a lot of kids that were very impact players for him. And when Grayson went down, the team kind of nosedived. So if that didn't open his eyes and say, look, I can go to a different program, try to make something new out of this whole situation, and kind of pack up my stuff before things get ugly and save myself some face, I get that that's why he did it, if that is the case. I believe that he knew that writing was on the wall with Coastal. I mean, like I said, with the Grayson stuff, it became pretty obvious that once QB1 wasn't out there, things were not going to be as good for the program, and trying to find another Grayson McCall to come to Coastal Carolina is going to be a very difficult thing to do. Grayson's been special for that program. So I don't blame him for realizing that how daunting of a task it's going to be to rewrite the ship again for Coastal, where he can just pack it up and keep on moving. I like Coastal. I still think they're going to be good if Grayson returns. I think they're going to have a difficult time of things if he leaves, and putting all your trust in Tim Beck doesn't really feel great to me. But that said, I get it from both sides. I get the anger. I get Jamie Chadwell's decision. I get everything about it. I know that it wasn't particularly nice or amicable or anything that a lot of folks that are bought into Coastal really wanted to see happen, but that's the nature of the beast sometimes. And then finally, what was my true shock of the coaching carousel, Scott Satterfield going to Cincinnati. I would never have seen that one coming in a million years. I feel like Cincinnati is a step up. Like, don't get me wrong. I've seen a lot of people being kind of confused as to why he would leave Louisville for Cincinnati, because it's not a huge jump, but with Cincy going to the Big 12, it does make a lot of sense, and especially if he can if he's got the chops in the transfer portal to put something together pretty quick, I think it works out pretty well for him. I didn't think Cincinnati's job would be open. Fickell was at least a candidate to leave, though, because we know how good he is. We've heard his name in these talks and the cycle and, this, that, and the other. It's been a very notable thing. I just didn't fully expect it. I didn't expect it to be to Wisconsin. But for Scott Satterfield to leave Louisville to go to Cincinnati was, even farther from the realm of possibility for me. So whenever I saw this news pop up, it was a genuine surprise to me. I don't know really what he will do there or how well he'll fare. It really depends on how much of that roster gets left from Fickell, how much he decides to bring with him to Wisconsin, if those kids even want to go to Wisconsin. But I think that it's going to be at least the most interesting thing to watch from the coaching cycle outside of Deion, because Deion brings his own level of interest and intrigue to that program. But just purely on, whoa, didn't expect that to happen, what happens next? I think Scott Satterfield's move to Cincinnati truly is the top of that, just from an overall football perspective. So what do you think about the transfer portal stuff, the Heisman finalists, the coaching decisions? I want to hear about it all in the comments below, or you can go to my Twitter account, which I will have linked in the description of this video. But for now, that is episode 53 of the From My Perspective podcast, and as always, I'll see you next time.